Hello, my name is Fabrice Condiminas and I'm the Mass Effect producer for BioWare Montreal.
Obviously, it's a whole new start essentially for Mass Effect. So, do you have any kind of references or kind of touchstones for old players and new players alike?
Yes, obviously we're doing science fiction and we look everywhere, both in fictional world and scientific world, to get inspired for the games we're doing. So Mass Effect as a franchise has always been about, if you take the literature, for example, is the science fiction book of the mid-50s, 60s, so the American science fiction Heinlein, C. Clarke, those guys. Then on terms of TV shows, I think the link to Star Trek is obvious to everybody, and in Andromeda even more, because we have a lot of cultural exploration, all that notion to discover new species and to make contact. In terms of movies, we have always been about the sci-fi movies from the 80s, you know, the Blade Runners, the Aliens, etc. Yeah, for these games, as I mentioned, we go also further in the cultural exploration, meeting new species, so we added some references that are more linked to anthropology, for example, ethnology, and on the real world side of things, the scientific side of things, we have always talked to space agencies, to aerospatial specialists, to xenobiologists, to look at our alien races, how they move, kind of thing. And this year we even have a partnership with the European Space Agency, so all that kind of things.
Was it kind of a tough decision to get rid of the Paragon Renegade thing, which of course was a very Shepard thing, as you guys said? Was that a tough decision to get rid of that in favour of a different dialogue system?
I wouldn't say it was tough, because we knew we wanted to move away from it since a while ago, just because the problem of being binary is that suddenly people see it nearly as a game in the game, or people want to go and take a stand, basically, take a side. And what happens when they do that is that they stop even reading the dialogues. They just select the thing they want. And this is not what we wanted, and we never wanted. We wanted the player to feel that he has the freedom to shape the personality he wants. And this is also required nuance. So not only you got a mechanical thing where we don't want the player to just pick a side and stick to it without even paying attention to what is said, but we also wanted a more nuanced approach. So this is why we call it the tone system, because it's not only about what you're saying, it's also how you're saying, right? This is part of your personality, the tone you're using when you interact with everybody.
Was that a complicated system to implement, because there's so many different responses now and different tones?
Yeah, so BioWare, historically, we know how to do branching, right? So to implement mechanically, not necessarily that complicated, but obviously adding nuance means that you added a layer of complexity, for example, in the trust relationship with other characters. So that complexify the overall map, but it also, the good part is that it will also complexify the nature of your relationship, because suddenly you have more parameters to play with, including in how you build trust with other characters, for example.
Yeah. Obviously, you have a lot of races you interact with. We saw Jarl, who's a new character. He's a Ket, is that right?
No, he's an Angara. He's the other race. Yeah.
Oh, okay, right. Are we going to see the Quarians or the Drell? We haven't seen those yet.
Oh, you'll have to play the game for that.
Really, no spoilers.
No spoilers on that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Are there any other new races that you can talk about at the moment?
Not more than the one you saw, so the Ket and the Angara, then the two, basically the two major forces in Andromeda Galaxy when you reach, and the two also very different races with very different approach, very different history, so all that you can dig into, and obviously, as you know, we're making games that are a matter of choice, so you can closer to one or to the other and interact differently with one another, but also within each races, we're talking about races, so it's entire civilization, so you will have nuance within the races and tension within the races. Within
the timeline, where does this fit into the kind of Mass Effect arc?
So you're 600 years after the event of the trilogy. So the Andromeda initiative starts during the event of the trilogy, but when you start to play the game, you're 600 years after.
Okay, so will there be any kind of throwbacks to the old games that you'll see? Will we ever see references to characters we've seen in the past?
Not really. So you will have hints, and someone who will have played the trilogy will recognize some of the things. So for example, at the very beginning of the game, when you see Ryder Senior, he has an N7 suit. If you know what that means, you understand. But it was really important for us that people who haven't played the trilogy or even don't know anything about the trilogy doesn't feel that they need to. There's absolutely zero need to.
Right, okay, cool. And also, we've got the siblings this time as well, which is interesting. So you've got Scott and Sarah. We haven't really seen much of it in the demo we've played today, but is there kind of much of an interaction between the two siblings? Does the other one play a major part?
Absolutely. The other one has a narrative role in the overall story. So I won't spoil it, but yes, your sibling isn't just here because we needed to choose a gender. He is part of the story.
Right. Is it wildly different depending on which gender you choose, or are they fairly similar, the parts they play?
It's not widely different, but there are adjustments.
So you kind of touched on Andromeda, kind of going back to the old kind of Mass Effect 1 RPG systems. What did you kind of want to amplify, kind of build upon that was, in those first games?
Yeah, starting a game after having such a legacy of 3 games made before, we obviously learn a lot from those 3 games. And I think what we try to do is bring the best of every of those games. Because suddenly we didn't have the narrative constraint that the trilogy had, so we could fresh start, we could do whatever we wanted. So the deep RPG system of Mass Effect 1, a sense of exploration, was something we're looking to. The character relationships in Mass Effect 2 and the loyalty missions is something we were taking and brought back. Yeah. The more action-oriented system of Mass Effect 3 is something we wanted to evolve. The difficulty is to balance the 3, right? And suddenly you take 5 years to make a game.
Sure. You've got new romance options as well, so you can kind of flirt and, you said one night stands and stuff like that.
It's more nuanced than it was in the trilogy, and this is same as before. We mentioned going away from the binary system. This is exactly the same idea, saying that all the intimate or sexual intercourse doesn't have to be about love and jealousy. You got nuance in between those two, so this is what we wanted to just add.
Can you essentially romance anyone in your crew, or are there only certain characters who are romanceable?
As usual, it's certain character. Now it's not limited to your squad, but it's specific characters. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. And in terms of kind of influences of other games, have you kind of been looking at other RPGs like The Witcher and things like that for kind of influences and inspiration?
So at BioWare, first, we are hardcore gamers, we're old gamers, so obviously we play a lot of games. This 5 years has passed since we started working on the game, so yes, there was a lot of games, and we keep being inspired. So of course, mechanically, for example, the combat, obviously we look at all the Destiny recently, Overwatch, all those games that goes in a sense. RPGs, not only Dragon Age Inquisition, but yes, The Witcher. Obviously we play that game and we try to get inspired by those. But it's also, it's also looking at even games that are not in the same genre. Let's take the Uncharted, for example. For us, it's extremely important that the industry, the level of writing and storytelling is clearly going up. There is a trend in the industry, we saw it with FIFA last year. There is a trend in the industry of putting attention that this is absolutely great for us. Because for a long time, we've been a bit referenced as, defining those standards, so it pushed the quality up and it forces us to up the game, and we love all that. So
there's only a month until the game is out. What kind of emotions are kind of going on at the studio right now? Are you scared, excited, or everything?
I think all of that. We're definitely tired. That's the first thing. We got a lot of work. We're tired. We're extremely excited. I'm lucky enough that I'm here, so for the past 3 days I've seen people completely outside of the team and EA and all that playing the game and react to it, and this is extremely excited. But 5 years is a really long time, so there's also that weird feeling on when I wake up on March 21st, what do I do with my life?
Yeah. So what are you hoping that players will kind of respond to strongest? What are you most excited about getting into players' hands in this game?
I think there's two. So first is that won't be a BioWare official answer. That's personal, totally personal thing. But I would say that the notion of discovery and curiosity, we try to push a lot the notion. So the more the player will want not only to follow the story, but just to be curious about what's happening in this world and go to the side quests and do all that, I think for me that will be a personal satisfaction, because we really try to push the people to say, you got a story, but you got an entire universe around you, you got new alien races, go learn on those and be excited about those. And I think the more theory will surround those and all that, that would be for me a big satisfaction. Now on the message of the game, I think that one of the things we're trying to put or pass a message on is that notion of humility. When you enter in that galaxy, when you're the alien and you're stuck there, and you have, so in the context of our politics and worldwide politics today, I think it's an important notion, so that would be a win. Mass Effect Andromeda released on PS4, Xbox One and PC March 21st in North America and March 23rd in Europe.